Nobody thought Maria would last the week. At 29, she was older than most of the recruits, and that was only part of the problem. The lingering injury from a car accident still ached in her leg, making every step painful. The drill sergeant's sharp voice cut through the cold morning air as he barked orders. Maria struggled through the obstacle course, her breath coming in heavy gasps, muscles burning with exhaustion. The other recruits glanced her way with disbelief, some barely hiding their smirks. "She's wasting everyone's time," one whispered. "She won't make it," said another. Maria felt the weight of their judgment more than the physical strain. She was the last one anyone expected to succeed here. She had joined the military not because it was an easy choice, but because she needed to prove something, not just to others, but to herself. Her father had been a decorated veteran, someone she admired deeply. Before he passed, he told her, "Strength isn't just about muscle. It's about heart and never giving up." Those words echoed in her mind as she pushed forward, refusing to let pain or doubt define her. Each day was a battle, not only against the harsh training, but against the whispering doubts that followed her like a shadow. The mornings began before sunrise, with physical drills that tested every inch of her endurance. The obstacle course was relentless. Walls to climb, ropes to swing across, mud to crawl through. Every failure felt like another nail in the coffin of her confidence. The instructors rarely offered encouragement. Instead, they seemed impatient, expecting her to quit. But Maria had something else, quiet determination. When the others rested, she kept going. When the mocking laughter began, she focused on her breathing. When her legs trembled with pain, she remembered her father's words. It wasn't about being the strongest in the group. It was about being the strongest for herself. She stayed late after drills, repeating exercises until her body screamed in protest. The bruises and cuts told the story of a woman refusing to be broken. The camp itself was a world apart. Surrounded by towering pine trees and endless fields, it was both beautiful and brutal. At night, the silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional call of a distant owl or the rustle of leaves. Maria often lay awake, listening to her own heartbeat, wondering if she had made the right choice. The others were fast asleep, but her mind raced. What if she failed? What if she didn't belong? But deep inside, a tiny flame burned. Maybe this was her chance to become more than what everyone expected. One afternoon, during a grueling endurance test, Maria's leg gave out. She fell hard onto the dirt, pain shooting through her body. The drill sergeant stormed over, shaking his head. "You're done," he snapped. "You're a liability." The words hit her like a punch, but she refused to accept them. Slowly, with trembling hands, she got back up. She limped the rest of the course, every step a test of will. When she crossed the finish line, the camp was silent. No cheers, no claps, just the sound of her ragged breathing. That night, Maria sat outside her tent, staring at the stars. The cool breeze brushed her face, carrying the scent of pine and earth. She thought about her father, about all the times he had believed in her when no one else did. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo of him in uniform. Her fingers traced the edges as she whispered, "I won't let you down." It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter what it took. The next morning, something inside Maria shifted. She no longer cared about the whispers or the doubtful glances. The pain in her leg was still there, but it was no longer an excuse. With steady resolve, she faced the day's challenges differently. She listened carefully to instructions, watched the movements of the others, and learned. Progress was slow, but it was progress. Slowly, the camp began to notice. The drill sergeant's sharp gaze softened just a little when Maria completed an exercise flawlessly. The other recruits started to treat her with less scorn and more curiosity. She was still the underdog, but something was changing. Maria was no longer just fighting the training. She was fighting the story everyone had written for her. The weeks stretched on, and with every passing day, Maria's confidence grew. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, and the doubts were not gone. But she also knew this. She had the heart to keep going when others might give up, and that was worth more than any muscle or medal. Nobody expected her to last the week. But Maria was still here, stronger, quieter, and more determined than ever. The camp was alive with whispers. Maria had become a quiet storm nobody could ignore anymore. But with that came a new kind of pressure, the kind that weighs on you silently. The label useless had been tossed around so carelessly that it had stuck to her like a shadow. She heard it everywhere, in the sideways glances, the half smiles, the whispered jokes. Some recruits didn't even try to hide it. "Why is she still here?" one said loud enough for a few to hear. "She's slowing us down." But Maria didn't answer. She kept her head down and let the words roll off her like water on stone. Inside, though, the pain was real. She spent her breaks alone, sitting on the edge of the field, watching the others laugh and joke, feeling like an outsider in a world that demanded toughness. But Maria was tougher than most gave her credit for. What nobody saw was the constant battle raging inside her, a mixture of doubt, fear, and stubborn hope. She wasn't just fighting the physical challenges of training. She was fighting to hold onto the belief that she belonged here, that she was more than what people saw on the surface. At night, when the camp was quiet and the stars blanketed the sky, Maria would pull out a worn letter from her father's old uniform pocket. His handwriting was shaky but steady. "You have a strength inside you, Maria, that can't be measured by drills or tests. Believe in that strength, and no one will ever call you useless." Those words were a lifeline. When the world doubted her, they reminded her who she was and who she could become. But the loneliness gnawed at her. Some nights, she wondered if it would ever be enough. She thought about quitting, about going back to the life she knew before the army. It would have been easier, safer. But then she thought of the mission she had taken on, the promise she made to herself and to her father. She refused to let fear win. One morning, the drill sergeant called the recruits to the field for a surprise endurance test. It was brutal, a test designed to push even the strongest to their limits. As the group lined up, Maria felt the familiar ache in her leg, but she squared her shoulders and took her place. The whistle blew, and they were off. The course was merciless. Mud, barbed wire, climbing ropes, heavy packs dragging behind them. Many stumbled and fell. Some gave up halfway. Maria gritted her teeth and kept moving, each step harder than the last. Halfway through, her leg buckled again, and she almost went down. But she caught herself, gritting through the pain. The other recruits passed her by, some glancing back with surprise. The girl they called useless was still standing. By the end, Maria crossed the finish line last, but she finished. The drill sergeant nodded in acknowledgement, a rare moment of respect. "You didn't quit," he said gruffly. "That counts for something." It wasn't praise, but it was enough. After the test, the camp was buzzing. Some recruits grudgingly admitted she had guts. Others still doubted. But Maria no longer cared about winning approval. She was fighting for something bigger, the chance to rewrite her story. She wasn't just a recruit anymore. She was a soldier in training, shaped not by ease, but by struggle. Her days fell into a new rhythm. She woke early, pushed harder, and learned faster. The instructors started noticing subtle changes, her improved stamina, sharper focus, and quiet resilience. Maria was transforming, but it was a slow process. Every small victory was hard-earned, every setback a lesson. One afternoon, a fellow recruit approached her. "I didn't think you'd make it," he admitted quietly. Maria looked up, surprised. "Neither did I," she said with a small smile. That moment, brief and simple, was a turning point. She wasn't alone anymore. Slowly, respect was beginning to replace doubt. But Maria knew the real challenge was just beginning. Training was only part of the journey. Somewhere ahead was a mission that would test everything she had learned. She wasn't sure if she was ready. What she did know was that she wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. As the sun set over the camp, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria stood alone on the hill overlooking the training grounds. The doubts still lingered, but they no longer controlled her. She took a deep breath and whispered to the wind, "I'm not useless. I'm just getting started." The night was unusually quiet at the camp. Most recruits had already settled into their tents, their breathing steady in the stillness. Maria lay awake, staring at the canvas above her, the weight of the day pressing down on her. Training was tougher than ever, but something deeper was troubling her: doubt. Despite her small victories, she still questioned if she was truly meant for this. Just as sleep began to pull her under, her phone buzzed sharply against the silence. She sat up, heart pounding, and reached for it. The screen displayed an unknown number. Confused, she answered. The voice on the other end was calm but serious, the kind of voice that made the world feel a little heavier. "Maria, this is Lieutenant Parker, calling on behalf of the President's office. You are requested to report immediately for a classified mission briefing." Maria blinked, struggling to believe what she had just heard. The President's office? A mission? For her? She glanced around the quiet camp, as if expecting someone to appear and tell her it was a mistake. But the voice was clear. "You are being called because your skills and resilience have not gone unnoticed. Prepare yourself. Instructions will follow." The call ended, leaving Maria sitting in the dark with her thoughts racing faster than her heartbeat. How could this be happening? The same people who had called her useless were now sending her on a mission from the highest office in the country? Her mind reeled with questions, but one feeling rose above them all: hope. She spent the next few hours in restless anticipation. By dawn, the camp was stirring again, and she was already packing her bag, rehearsing her thoughts, steadying her nerves. When she reported to the base commander, his expression was unreadable, but his tone was firm. "Maria, you've been selected to lead a critical reconnaissance operation. This is your chance to prove what you're truly capable of. No one else can do this." The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. The mission was dangerous, confidential, and demanded precision. She felt the eyes of the entire camp on her, some filled with disbelief, others with newfound respect, and a few with envy. She took a deep breath and nodded. This was it, the moment where her quiet determination met the world's expectations. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Maria was briefed in secrecy, trained on specialized skills she had never imagined needing: navigation, intelligence gathering, communication under pressure. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could cost lives. The training was intense and unforgiving. But Maria didn't falter. Her mind sharpened and her body adjusted, fueled by a mixture of fear and fierce determination. There were moments when she wanted to collapse, when the weight of the unknown threatened to crush her. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered her father's words about strength and heart. She thought about the people who had doubted her, and a quiet fire ignited inside her. This mission wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to herself that she belonged here. Her team was small but skilled. They looked to her for leadership, sensing the quiet confidence she carried beneath the surface. Maria learned to trust their instincts and to lean on them when the pressure became too much. Together, they prepared to step into the unknown, the air thick with tension and unspoken fears. One evening, as she reviewed the mission details for the 100th time, Maria found herself alone on the base's rooftop, gazing at the stars. The vastness of the sky reminded her how small she was, and yet how big her purpose could be. She whispered a silent promise into the night: "I will not fail. Not now. Not ever." The next morning, as the sun began to rise, Maria stood ready at the edge of the camp. She was no longer the recruit labeled useless. She was a soldier chosen for a mission that mattered, a mission that could change everything. Her heart raced, but her resolve was steady. The call had come. Now it was time to answer it. The morning air was thick with anticipation. Maria stood among the recruits, but she was no longer one of them. The news of her mission had spread quietly through the camp, turning skeptical whispers into cautious respect. Every eye was on her now. She could feel their doubts transforming into something new, a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Could the girl they once called useless really be the one trusted with such an important task? Training intensified. Each day felt heavier, the drills more relentless. But Maria welcomed the pressure. It was no longer about proving she could keep up. It was about proving she could lead. Her team was tight-knit, composed of seasoned soldiers who respected skill and grit above all else. They followed her instructions with precision, testing her limits at every turn. The instructors watched her closely. The same drill sergeant who had dismissed her before now nodded silently when she completed difficult exercises flawlessly. He said little, but his eyes told a different story. He saw something in her now that he hadn't before. Maria's endurance improved, her strategic thinking sharpened, and her confidence grew like a steady flame in the dark. Yet the pressure was immense. Every mistake she made was magnified, every success scrutinized. The camp was no longer just a training ground. It was a stage, and Maria was center spotlight, whether she wanted it or not. The weight of expectations sometimes threatened to crush her, but she refused to break. One afternoon, during a simulated combat exercise, everything shifted. The team was tasked with navigating a mock hostile territory, relying on Maria's leadership to get them through. The terrain was rough, visibility poor, and communication was limited. Tensions rose quickly. A wrong call could mean failure. Maria felt the familiar knot in her stomach, but she pushed it aside. She took a deep breath, scanning the area, then gave clear, calm commands. Her voice cut through the chaos like a beacon. The team moved as one, responding to her guidance with trust and precision. Midway through the exercise, a sudden obstacle appeared. An unexpected enemy team ambushed them, forcing Maria to think fast. She ordered her team to split, drawing attention away from the vulnerable members. It was a risky move, but it worked. Her plan was precise, bold, and it saved the exercise from failure. When the drill ended, the camp was silent for a beat before the instructors erupted into applause. Maria's team gathered around her, a mix of relief and admiration in their eyes. For the first time, she saw genuine respect, not pity or skepticism. It was a moment she would carry with her forever. Despite this victory, Maria knew better than to get comfortable. The mission ahead was far more dangerous than any drill. She spent long nights studying maps, memorizing protocols, and preparing for the unknown. The silence of the camp at night often echoed with her own doubts, but each morning she faced the day with renewed determination. One evening, the camp commander called her into his office. His expression was serious but approving. "Maria, you've come a long way. The President's office has been following your progress closely. Your leadership under pressure is impressive. Remember, the real test isn't here, it's out there, where it counts." The words weighed heavily on her. She wasn't just training anymore. She was preparing for a mission that could change everything, for her, her team, and the country. There was no room for error. Back in her quarters, Maria sat quietly, reflecting on the journey. The woman who had arrived at camp labeled useless was almost unrecognizable to her now. The pain, the doubt, the loneliness, it had all forged something stronger inside her. She reached for the worn photo of her father, tracing the edges with trembling fingers. Tomorrow, she thought, tomorrow everything changes. The call from the President had set this path in motion. Now, it was up to her to walk it. As the stars blinked softly outside her window, Maria whispered a promise to herself. No matter what came next, she would face it head on. Because now, she was more than the doubts, the whispers, and the pain. She was a soldier. And she was ready. The sun barely broke the horizon when Maria woke, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Today was the day she would leave the safety of the camp and step into the unknown. The team gathered quietly, their faces sharp with focus and a hint of tension. Maria looked at each one of them, their steady eyes, their silent nods, and felt the weight of responsibility settle firmly on her shoulders. They trusted her to lead them through danger. She couldn't afford to let them down. As they loaded into the transport vehicle, the engine's rumble seemed to echo her own nervous energy. The landscape outside the window shifted from familiar training grounds to stretches of rugged terrain. The mission brief had been clear: infiltrate a hostile area, gather crucial intelligence, and return without detection. No room for mistakes. No second chances. Maria's mind raced through every detail she'd memorized: the maps, the escape routes, the signals. Her fingers tightened around the straps of her pack as the vehicle rolled to a stop. Silence fell over the team as they disembarked, the only sounds the crunch of boots on gravel and the distant calls of birds. Moving through the thick brush, Maria's senses heightened. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent her heart skipping. The team followed her lead, eyes scanning the shadows, ears attuned to the faintest hint of danger. They were invisible ghosts, slipping through the forest with purpose and caution. Hours passed with no sign of the enemy. The weight of the mission pressed on Maria's mind like a storm waiting to break. Then, suddenly, a flicker of movement, a patrol, just ahead. She signaled her team to freeze, her breath caught in her throat. The enemy soldiers were close, their voices low but urgent. One wrong move and the mission would be over before it began. Maria's voice was barely a whisper as she gave instructions. They melted into shadows, staying low, moving silently. Her heart pounded as she watched the patrol pass mere feet away. The seconds stretched into eternity. When the danger passed, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The team pressed forward, deeper into hostile territory. They reached a small clearing where the intel was believed to be hidden. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she searched the area. Then, under a pile of debris, she found a small, weathered case. Inside were documents, maps, codes, plans that could change the course of the mission and possibly save lives. Relief washed over her, but there was no time to celebrate. The return journey loomed, just as perilous as the way in. Maria rallied her team, knowing that every step back through enemy land was a test of their resolve and skill. As they retraced their path, the atmosphere shifted. The enemy was alert now, and the forest seemed to close in around them. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the trees. Chaos exploded, the sharp crack of bullets mingling with shouts. Maria's training kicked in, shouting orders, signaling directions, keeping her team together amid the chaos. They ducked behind thick trunks and rocks, moving swiftly but carefully. Maria's leg ached fiercely, the old injury flaring with every sprint, but she pushed the pain aside. Her focus was absolute. The safety of her team depended on it. One by one, they navigated the deadly gauntlet, using every skill they had learned. Maria's leadership was steady, a calm in the storm. When the last round of gunfire faded and the enemy retreated, the team found a moment to catch their breath. No one was hurt, but the tension lingered like a shadow. The journey back was slower, each step measured and cautious. When the familiar outline of the base came into view, a wave of relief swept over Maria. The mission had been a success, but it had come at a cost: exhaustion, fear, and the weight of what could have happened. At the debriefing, the commander's words were clear. You showed courage, leadership, and resilience under fire. This mission proved you belong here, Maria. His eyes held respect, And for the first time, Maria allowed herself to believe it. That night, she sat alone, the weight of the day settling in. The journey had tested everything: her body, her mind, her spirit. But it had also shown her something she had long doubted: her own strength. The call from the president had been more than a summons. It was a challenge, and she had met it head-on. Maria reached for the worn photo of her father once more. Her fingers traced the lines of his face, feeling the connection across time and space. She whispered into the quiet room, "I made it. I'm not useless." The words hung in the air like a promise and a victory. The days after the mission passed in a blur of activity. Maria moved through the base like a new person, confident but cautious. The word was out. The soldier they once dismissed as useless had just returned from a mission that others had doubted she could handle. Yet, despite the newfound respect, Maria felt the quiet pull of something deeper. The mission was over, but the battle within her was far from finished. Her body ached in places she hadn't expected. The old injury flared up constantly, a reminder that strength wasn't just about courage, but also endurance. She spent her mornings in physical therapy, working to regain full mobility, each painful session a test of her resolve. Her teammates visited, some quietly admiring her grit, others eager to hear her stories, but unsure how to approach her. Maria welcomed their company, but often found herself retreating into silence. The mission had changed her in ways she wasn't ready to share. One afternoon, the camp commander summoned her again. His face was serious but kind. "Maria, the president wants to meet with you personally," he said. The news sent a ripple through her. This was more than a mission debrief. It was recognition at the highest level. Maria's thoughts raced. What could the president possibly want from her? When the day arrived, Maria stood at attention outside the official building, nerves twisting in her stomach. She wore her uniform with pride, but inside, she was a bundle of anticipation and uncertainty. The door opened, and an aide called her in. The room was simple but imposing, and there, seated behind a large desk, was the president himself. Maria felt her breath catch. The president's eyes met hers with a calm intensity. "Maria, your courage and determination have not gone unnoticed. You've faced challenges many wouldn't dare confront, and you've done so with grace and strength." She swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. The president continued, "Your story is inspiring. It reminds us all that labels can never define a person's true worth." Maria nodded, speechless but grateful. Then the president leaned forward slightly. "There is another mission on the horizon, one that requires the very qualities you've shown. It will be dangerous and demanding, but I believe you are ready." Maria's heart pounded. The weight of the words was immense, but so was the honor. She had come so far from the girl who struggled through training, doubted by many, to a soldier personally called upon by the highest office in the land. After the meeting, Maria stepped outside into the crisp air. The sky was wide and clear, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a quiet sense of peace. She wasn't just fighting to prove herself anymore. She was fighting for something greater. Back at the camp, her team greeted her with a mixture of pride and curiosity. The dynamic had shifted. Maria was no longer just one of them. She was a leader, a symbol of what determination could achieve. She spent the next days preparing, training harder, pushing past pain and doubt. But even with her growing confidence, there were moments of vulnerability. Late at night, she would sit alone, wrestling with the question, could she really live up to these new expectations? Was she strong enough to face what was coming? One evening, as the stars flickered overhead, Maria pulled out the letter from her father's uniform once again. His words echoed in her mind. Strength isn't just about muscle. It's about heart. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She knew the journey ahead would test everything she had, but she was ready. Because this time, Maria was no longer fighting alone. She had her team, her belief in herself, and a mission that mattered more than any fear. And that was a power no one could take away. The path ahead was uncertain, but Maria stepped forward with steady resolve, ready to meet whatever came next. The night before the new mission was thick with tension. Maria lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her quarters. Every sound seemed amplified. The distant murmur of guards, the hum of the generators, even the steady rhythm of her own breathing. Tomorrow would change everything. She had been called upon not just once, but twice by the highest authority. The pressure was immense. But this time, she felt ready. Not because the doubts were gone, but because she had learned to carry them without letting them break her. Her team gathered for one final briefing before departure. The room was small, dimly lit, and charged with quiet intensity. The commander spoke plainly. This mission will test you in ways you've never imagined. It's not just about strength or strategy. It's about heart, about trust. You'll be sent deep into hostile territory to gather intelligence that could prevent a larger conflict. Maria met the eyes of her team members, soldiers she now considered family. Their faces reflected the same mixture of fear and determination she felt. She stood and addressed them, her voice steady. "We've come too far to turn back now. We know what's at stake. We will rely on each other. No matter what happens, we stay united." The room filled with nods. In that moment, Maria wasn't the recruit who once stumbled and doubted. She was a leader. The woman who had been called useless was now the person her country was counting on. When the sun rose, the convoy moved out. The landscape blurred past, a mixture of rugged hills and dense forests. Maria's mind raced through every scenario she had prepared for. The unknown loomed large, but she felt a calm beneath the surface, a steady flame born from every hardship, every victory, and every moment of doubt she had overcome. Hours into the mission, the convoy stopped at a checkpoint. Suddenly, an alarm blared, cutting through the still air. The team scrambled, senses sharp. Maria's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay focused. This was no longer a drill. The real danger was here. They were under attack. Bullets tore through the trees. Shouts echoed in the chaos. Maria barked orders, moving swiftly to coordinate defense. Her team responded without hesitation, covering each other, moving with precision under fire. The terrain was unforgiving, but Maria's leadership was a lifeline. A nearby explosion shook the ground. Maria saw one of her teammates fall, clutching his leg. Without hesitation, she sprinted through the danger to reach him. The world narrowed down to just the two of them. She applied first aid with trembling hands, fighting the rising panic. "Stay with me," she urged, locking eyes with him. The moment stretched on, a fragile thread between fear and hope. The firefight continued around them, but Maria refused to give in to despair. Her mind was clear, focused on getting her team to safety. She radioed for backup, relayed their position, and kept the injured soldier conscious until help arrived. When the dust settled, the cost was clear. They had survived, but not without sacrifice. Maria looked at her team, faces streaked with dirt and sweat, eyes reflecting pain, but also resilience. The mission was far from over, but they had proven something vital. Together, they were unstoppable. That night, as they regrouped in a secure location, Maria allowed herself a brief moment of vulnerability. The weight of command, the fear for her team, the memory of those moments under fire, it all pressed down on her. But then she remembered her father's words, the promise she had made to herself. Strength was more than muscle, it was heart. She looked around at her team, the family she had found in the chaos. They had all changed, scarred but stronger. Maria knew the mission ahead would demand everything they had, but she was no longer alone in the fight. The dawn was coming, and with it, the hope that their courage would shape a safer future. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the worn faces of Maria and her team. The night's events weighed heavily on them, but there was no time to rest. Their mission was far from over. Maria stood at the edge of the camp, the cool morning air filling her lungs, steadying her racing heart. She had come so far, from the recruit no one believed in to the leader who had faced fire and fear and emerged stronger. Now, everything depended on the next steps. As the team prepared to move out, Maria felt a deep surge of responsibility. Every decision she made would impact not just their lives, but the future of countless others. She carried the memory of those lost in the firefight close to her chest, fueling her determination. They had suffered, yes, but they had also shown what true courage looked like. The journey ahead was treacherous. The terrain grew rougher, and the enemy's presence loomed like a shadow in every direction. But Maria's focus was unwavering. She moved with quiet confidence, her mind sharp and alert, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the soft crunch of boots on dirt and whispered commands. Then, in a small clearing, they found what they had been searching for, an enemy communications outpost. Maria signaled her team to halt, heart pounding with the knowledge that this was the moment that could turn the tide. The operation had to be precise. Maria's plan was clear: disable their communications and retrieve vital data without alerting reinforcements. She briefed her team one last time, their faces tight with concentration. As they moved forward, every step was measured, every breath controlled. Inside the outpost, the atmosphere was thick with danger. Shadows danced on the walls as Maria carefully navigated the space, her fingers steady as she accessed the enemy systems. The minutes stretched like hours. Then, finally, she held the data drives, the proof they needed to protect their country. Suddenly, alarms blared. The enemy had discovered their presence. The mission exploded into chaos. Maria's voice cut through the noise. Fall back. Move, move, move. The team fought through gunfire and confusion, their training and trust in each other their only shield. Maria felt a searing pain in her side, but she pushed forward, adrenaline dulling the ache. Her focus was clear: get her team to safety. They broke through the enemy lines, racing against time and exhaustion. When they finally reached friendly territory, relief washed over them like a wave. Medical teams rushed to treat the wounded, and commanders gathered to debrief. Maria stood quietly, her body battered, but her spirit unbroken. The data they recovered would change everything. It revealed plans for attacks, locations of hidden bases, and details that would save countless lives. The mission's success was not just a victory, it was a turning point. In the days that followed, Maria received messages of gratitude and respect from high-ranking officials. The same people who once doubted her now acknowledged her strength and leadership. But for Maria, the real victory was deeper: the knowledge that she had proven to herself that no label could define her worth. Sitting alone one evening, Maria looked at the worn photo of her father once more. She whispered, "We did it. I'm not useless." The words felt heavy with meaning, a quiet triumph born from years of struggle and resilience. Her journey was far from over, but Maria had discovered something that would carry her through any challenge: faith in herself. And that, she knew, was the true measure of strength.